Voting takes place Saturday, June 13th through Tuesday, June 16th for president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. If you're a registered voter for the 2026 LCMS presidential election, please vote to re-elect Issues Etc. regular guest Pastor Matt Harrison for a final 3-year term. If you're not a voter, encourage your pastor and your congregation's lay voter to vote for President Harrison. Official ballots have been mailed to all registered voters. Remember to vote June 13th through the 16th.
The emperor has no clothes on. He's buck naked. That child had to speak the truth no matter how it would make the king feel. And we have to do that today. We have to be very conscientious objectors to the madness that is gender ideology.
And most people default into this idea of feminism is this idea that men are contemptible, which is, of course, the idea behind the smashing the patriarchy, and women need to be just like them and have the same equality.
The Crusades were a very belated response to many centuries of Muslim conquests, in which 2/3 of the old Christian world had already fallen to Muslim conquest.
And our faith is strong, not because of the fervor of its affection, but because of the object to which it clings, Christ. And there is no stronger faith than a really timid grasping to the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus.
Families sailing on their family vacation on lakes in Minnesota love Issues Etc.
We love Issues Etc. Woo!
Some would like to portray CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as a harmless advocacy group for Islam. But as I learned this last weekend, at least the River Forest Police do not agree. They considered it a danger. Welcome back to Issues Etc., coming to you live from the studios of Lutheran Public Radio in Collinsville, Illinois. I'm Todd Wilkin. Thanks for tuning us in. We're going to be responding to listener email and the Issues Etc. comment line dealing with last week's Making the Case conference and another subject, the ongoing presidential election in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Our email address, talkback@issuesetc.org. Comment line 618-223-8382. In about a half hour, we'll welcome Katie Faust. We'll talk about the declining support for same-sex marriage among Republicans.
Well, a little more than 24 hours ago, you, Deaconess Fredrickson, and I returned home for Friday and Saturday's 2026 Issues Etc. Making the Case conference. And when we got into the school van that we rent from, thank you very much, St. Paul Lutheran School in Hamel, Illinois, by the way, the only classical Lutheran school in Greater St. Louis. Do you remember one of the first things you said to me?
I don't know. It's all a blur to me. What did I say?
Are we off on Monday?
Oh, yes.
I guess you know
actually
the
what I
answer.
did was I said something. You and Lynn were talking about something, and you said, "Well, we'll talk about that at work tomorrow." And I said, "I thought we were off tomorrow because I think for almost every conference we've done, we've taken Mondays off because we work. It's not just working. It's pretty intense work for all three of us, all through the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday we drive home. So that was and I will say, for the record, my wife told me to tell you this, that you're in the doghouse. So.
Because we didn't take Monday off?
Yeah.
There's been many Mondays. We will never take Monday off unless we record in advance. And
I just forgotten that we hadn't recorded in advance because everything leading up to the conference is a whirlwind.
Well, I think we might have had time to record in advance had we not lost 3 speakers
That's
10
true.
days before the conference. Well, first of all, thanks to everyone who attended.
Oh, yes. It was a great crowd.
Great people. We talk about we have the smartest listeners in podcasting. We have the most faithful listeners in podcasting.
We usually want a show of hands as we start the conference as to how many people are there for the very first time. And it's routinely, I would say, estimating by the show of hands, a third to maybe even more than a third of the people attending there. And then we have people who've come back for every single one, or people who, this is my third, my fourth, we've done 16 of them. So they tend to pile up. But a third of the people at least are there for the very, very first time. And it's really nice to see that. They get to interact with our speakers. You have to explain what happened with the speakers in some detail. And they get to interact with the speakers. This year is a little more awkward because several of our speakers required either private or law enforcement security. And so while they still had access to the speakers, there might have been a security guy standing by just to make sure that everything was okay. That's the first time we've ever had to deal with that. Even when we had, did we have Bill Barr once?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we did. See, I might have
It's a fever
dreamed it.
dream.
Yeah. Even when we had Bill Barr, who was coming off of a tenure in the Trump administration.
2-time U.S. Attorney General.
Yes. When we had him speak, he arrived with no security. And we got a lot of complaints from listeners beforehand, and then the Dobbs leak happened, or the Dobbs decision. The Dobbs decision was released, and then he had to have security when he left. But this is the first time we've had to have, what was it, 6 police officers that were there? I didn't go outside.
First of all, we hired.
Sure.
We hired 2, but there had to be at least 6 there on Friday. And this is when Robert Spencer was supposed to speak and do an interview with us.
Right. He was going to just simply do an interview on the show, as he did today, as he's done for, I think we counted up 30 years on this program. He and other speakers, but he was going to do an interview live we start the conference with a live program. And
if you listened last hour, you found out why. There was, Wednesday and Thursday, there were like tornadoes or really bad storms, and Chicago airports were backed up.
And that meant it's a domino effect, and it backs up flights all over the country. And Robert Spencer's flight was affected by that. So he was not able to come to the conference.
So we find this out about Thursday afternoon, right?
Yeah, we're there setting up and testing our equipment. And Jeff says, Spencer may not be able to make it. And then about 2 hours later,
on dinner time,
right as we're going to dinner, Jeff gets an email from not Aaron Hawley's press secretary, but Josh Hawley's husband.
Hawley's Senator Josh Hawley, Missouri, senior scheduler.
Says, just letting you know, we really, really regret this. Aaron and Josh have had, I think, a family matter, what is what they said, and she will not be able to attend.
And she's supposed to speak in about 25, 26 hours the next day.
Yeah.
So Spencer was supposed to kick off the conference at 3 o'clock on Friday, and we find out about 24 hours in advance that he's not going to make it due to flights being canceled. And then about 5 o'clock, about 26 hours before Aaron Hawley is supposed to speak, we found out she can't make it. And remember, 10 days before the conference, we found out that Governor Ron DeSantis wasn't going to make it. So 15 conferences. We've never had a speaker back out. And we had 3 10 days before the event, 2 within about 24 hours when they were actually supposed to speak.
For various reasons. Governor DeSantis had a scheduling conflict that emerged after he said yes to us. He's the governor of his state. We understand that. Aaron Hawley, a family matter. Family always comes first. We would not expect her to attend or speak if she had something more pressing at home. And then inclement weather for Robert Spencer.
So before we go through the conference, I know you did this to the attendees. People in attend, thanks so much for Concordia University Chicago President Russell Dawn, who, as always, do a great job hosting us and didn't back down from the mob. A lot of times events like this could get canceled or speakers get canceled, not because the organizers, that would be us, want to cancel the speaker or the guest, but because the head of these institutions get weak-kneed. But President Dawn stood with us, but also the entire staff at CUC, Mary Caesar, Andrew Gallup, Jim Kozinski does all the video, Rob Glinke and his staff, he does all the audio, the AV stuff, Frank Budig of Sodexo, who runs the meals for us. Thanks to everyone at Concordia University, Chicago, for being great hosts again.
And it was amazing. I just want to say something about how well they handled the people. We went to Mary Caesar before the thing started, and Jeff said, well, we got 500 people over there plus, and we don't want to overwhelm the cafeteria, or what do they call it, dining hall. And she said, just go ahead and send them over. We're fine. We can get them through. And they did. Very easily. It was just another day at the office for Mary.
So let's recollect. So we pivoted. Robert Spencer was replaced by President Don. Anybody listened on to Friday's show live or the podcast over the weekend or today, he did a great job on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence on short notice. Now, this guy has not been teaching law since he became president of CUC, I believe back in like 2019. But he did a bang-up job. Molly Hemingway, as expected, did a great job on her book. Great stories. Like stories inside the Supreme Court.
I actually lost track. You know what? I very seldom do this because I've been doing this show for a long time, and you do develop a certain kind of detachment from the conversation because you're paying attention to a lot of things at once. You're paying attention to the clock. You're paying attention to all those things. Jeff is coming in and interrupting me in the course of a normal program probably 20 times a day. But I got so pulled in to the stories that Molly was telling about Alito that it's almost like I forgot I was doing a podcast in front of 500 people with my producer standing over Molly's shoulder. I got pulled in. It was like tunnel vision, hearing those stories, and kind of lost track of where I was and what I was doing, and the fact that, you know, I had to go to a break in a couple of minutes.
And then Ryan Anderson, the president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center and member of President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. I'm sitting here listening to his presentation on making the case for social conservatism, and I'm thinking, this guy, progressives would have been more upset about his presentation than Governor DeSantis on cultural Marxism. He hit transgenderism, natural marriage versus gay marriage. He hit beginning and end of life and religious liberty. I mean, if that's not going to make a progressive go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, I don't know what will, but he did a great job. And then Megan Basham, who was scheduled to speak first thing Saturday morning on making the case against progressive influence in the church, we had to move her up, and she gladly did so, to Saturday night. And if you recall, when we found out about Aaron Hawley, so we got President Don to commit to do that first slot. Aaron Hawley, I called Katie Faust, whom we're going to hear from in about 15 minutes here, and then she's way out in Seattle. It's like, hey, can you come? She already had another commitment. I think it was a family commitment. She couldn't do it. And then Dr. Brad Wilcox. Now, this guy's he's the social scientist.
He's the go-to.
He's the GOAT.
On family and research into family for not only people who are concerned about the family, but people who don't care about the family, the secular press. He's the go-to guy.
He's professor of sociology at the University of Virginia, heads up the Institute for Family Studies, the National Marriage Project. So I call him right around dinner. You remember I went out with the deaconess. You and I are sitting there at that little bar or pub, whatever it was, at the Carlton of Oak Park. I call him, and I can hear, he's got 9 children. I can hear them. I was like, there's no way this guy is going to be able to speak at our conference Saturday morning.
His wife will not let him leave.
Exactly.
Short notice on the weekend.
Yes, with 9 children. I said, Dr. Wilcox, we're in a bind. Aaron Hawley had to back out. Is there any way you can be here to speak Saturday morning? He said, what do you want me to speak about? I said, something, making the case for natural marriage. He goes, well, I just did a presentation a couple of weeks ago at the University of Notre Dame on making the case for 20-something marriage. I can do that. I said, that'd be great. And he said it was very well received at Notre Dame. I said, that'd be perfect. He said, well, let me see. This when you have relationships with these people, he said, let me see if I can get a flight. Texted me about, half hour later, got the flight. I'll be there Friday night. I can speak Saturday morning, but I got to leave by noon because my in-law's 60th wedding anniversary party is Saturday night. He came in And as you said, we had the most questions for a conference speaker by our attendees in the 16-year history of this event on his presentation, making the case for 20-something marriage. Just bang up.
He came in,
job.
it's like he had been prepping for weeks, came in, gave his presentation, did a quick Q&A, literally grabbed his suitcase and left for the airport. So it was a really, really, that's a hard thing to do. I've done that kind of thing where you just show up and then you go away. And we can't thank him enough for coming in and just pinch hitting.
So we got to go to break here pretty soon. And then President Harrison did a great job on making the case for the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod. Pastor Will Whedon led the hymn sing, and that's, I just saw somebody on Facebook. It's what we hear all the time. The hymn sing alone is worth the price of admission. And then we concluded with the Wolfman, the great one and only Brian Wolfmueller, on making the case for Christian courage.
And I compared him to, I always do because he's our closer. And I said, closers sometimes they have bad days. Someone pointed out to me online today that as I was comparing Pastor Wolfmueller to the Cardinals closer who often loads the bases, that very Cardinals closer walked 3 men. So somehow I was in sync with the events of the Cardinals universe. When we come back, we'll respond to email and the Issues Etc. comment line. Voting takes place Saturday, June 13th through Tuesday, June 16th for President of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. If you're a registered voter for the 2026 LCMS presidential election, please vote to re-elect Issues Etc. regular guest Pastor Matt Harrison for a final 3-year term. If you're not a voter, encourage your pastor and your congregation's lay voter to vote for President Harrison. Official ballots have been mailed to all registered voters. Remember to vote June 13th through the 16th.
Luther Academy provides additional theological education for our mission partners around the world, specifically pastors who are asking for additional education but do not have the necessary resources in their own church bodies. By donating to Luther Academy today, you will be supplying food, housing, books, professors, and travel for Lutheran pastors who attend our conferences. To learn more about Luther Academy and how you can donate today, visit lutheracademy.com. lutheracademy.com.
Confessional Lutherans, we've got your back. You're listening to Issues Etc.
Trinity Lutheran Church, LCMS of Tryon, North Carolina, also serves the South Carolina upstate. We uphold the confessional standard of the Evangelical Lutheran Church. We follow the apostolic practice of celebrating the Lord's Supper each Lord's Day using a biblical historic liturgy. Our small parish is teeming with little ones, along with many of retirement age. Several Issues Etc. listeners have been welcomed into Christ's fold here from outside Lutheranism. We invite any unchurched in the area to join us at 10:15 each Sunday.
What can we learn about the worship practices of the first Lutherans from a Reformation edict by a Calvinist leader? Find out in Will Whedon's column in the latest Issues Etc. journal. We'll send it to you for free. Just click the red journal subscription button at issuesetc.org and enter your email address. In the Wittenberg Trail feature, Pastor Michael Hughes writes about his journey from progressive Lutheranism to confessional Lutheranism. The Issues Etc. journal. Subscribe for free at issuesetc.org. Our Issues Etc. book of the month for June from Concordia Publishing House is called Lift Your Eyes, How to Live Outside Yourself in an Age where we are inundated with the message that truth and meaning and purpose lie inside ourselves. Scripture says the opposite. All of those things are found outside ourselves in Christ and in His Word. Find out more about Lift Your Eyes, How to Live Outside Yourself by going to our website, issuesetc.org, or call Concordia Publishing House, 1-800-325-3040. We're responding to listener email and the Issues Etc. comment line.
One more comment about the issues, etc., making the case conference. John writes, please try for Governor DeSantis again next year on cultural Marxism.
All right. That's
it's already done.
It's already done. We
were hoping to announce at this conference to the attendees that he would be there next year. However, he's term limited out. So he's going to have an entirely new, should he run for president, which would be, a year and a half before the presidential election, right? Am I right?
Right.
So he's going to have an entirely new staff. So I don't see how they can commit now, his senior scheduler for the state of Florida.
And he's not going to commit himself personally. He if he's going to run for president, he's going to have to make that decision. But we are going to do our best to lock him in for next year on cultural Marxism.
And we assure you that we will, without a doubt, have a guest make the case against Islam at the 2027 Issues, etc., Making the Case conference.
Top-notch guest. Yes.
Absolutely. Christopher, he says, your listeners, subscribers would be better served by having you interview each of the candidates for president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and posting your endorsement on the website. For my part, your endorsement without interviews increases the suspicions that the candidate is weak or that Issues, etc., has something to gain in that candidate's election. A thoughtful comparison of all the candidates with the reasons behind your endorsement would be more helpful. Thanks for the email. Thanks for listening, Christopher.
Okay, so this is just track with me for a second. I want to deal with the second thing first, that we have something to gain. Well, I mean, in a sense, we do. It helps to have a regular guest and a friend of the show and friends of the show in positions of leadership of the Lutheran Church of Missouri. So I'm not going to lie about that. Not that I don't know that we benefit in a real way from that in any way, but it's nice to have it's always nice to have a good relationship there. So I guess that's a benefit. There's no financial benefit to speak of. I mean, I guess as opposed to what?
From a listenership perspective, it would actually behoove us to have somebody.
Oh, it would be much better to have a hostile leadership of the Lutheran Church. I'm talking cynically, in purely political and human terms. We would greatly benefit from a hostile leadership of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod in terms of listenership and support.
As we did from 2008 to 2010 when we were canceled in 2008 by the previous leadership of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Absolutely. Had somehow by some strange circumstance the leadership been friendly to us, we probably would not have been able to gain the kind of listenership as we went independent that we had already, and keep the listenership. So we'd be better off if the leadership was hostile, but we're not going to be that cynical or purely kind of bare-fisted political. We want the best for our church. And so my endorsement and this is not the first time I've endorsed him every time he's run publicly. My endorsement for President Harrison is,
first of all, it's not just your endorsement.
Oh, no.
I mean, this is Lutheran Public Radio's endorsement.
Right. And our endorsement of this is based upon what we believe is the best for the church body. Now, remember, we are not in any way officially associated with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We're a completely independent operation.
And we buy the airtime from 3 to 5 Central weekday afternoons on the Synod's own radio station.
And by our reckoning, we don't make money doing that. We lose money doing that. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but the last time I looked, we lose money doing that, which is something we're willing to do. So as to interviewing all the candidates and presenting them as kind of neutral choices that can be made, I don't think I could do that in good conscience. Not only do I want to be consistent in my endorsement of President Harrison, which I do for theological reasons.
In which we have done since 2010. So that's 10, 13, 16, 19, 23, 6 times. This is nothing new.
No. that endorsement is based upon, at first, the hope and then the knowledge that President Harrison would work in every capacity he has as president. He does not have infinite capacity, but work in every capacity that he has to increase in the congregations, the pastors, and the institutions of Synod devotion to Lutheran doctrine and practice. It's his job. And I then and now still believe he's the best person to do that job. And his track record proves over the course of 16 years that he's not only capable of doing that, willing to do that, but is able to do that for another 3 years.
Gary writes, I voted for President Harrison on ballot number 1 and plan on doing so on ballot number 2.
That's good to hear. We need to note that we are on ballot number 2. This has never happened before since we went to online voting as for the president, pre-convention online voting for the president. There are a lot of unprecedented things occurring and will occur in the future. So in every election, in the first election of Pastor Harrison, he was elected on the first ballot at the convention by a very healthy margin. In his second elections, he has been elected on the first ballot, whether it was being held by, I think there was a time when it was being held by mail. Wow, that sounds quaint, doesn't it? And then online. And this is the first time that he has not gotten a clear majority in the first ballot, which is due to a number of factors that I don't really need to go into. But it's more important to me that this is really unprecedented. We've never done this as a synod, and so we always don't know what to do. So the synod is holding a second ballot. They have a provision for this. I think they have a provision for ballots all the way up to a certain deadline before the convention. And so they'll hold a second ballot, and that's being held. It started Saturday and ends, I guess, midnight tomorrow. So that's the 13th through the 16th of June. And I have a strong suspicion that we won't need a third. But I've been surprised before.
And if you're a registered, what should our listeners do?
So every pastor in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod representing a single congregation, and every congregation represented by a lay voter have the opportunity to vote for president of Synod. That's a lot of people, 8,700, something like that. So they have been contacted by Synod with the credentials in order to take another vote during this 4-day period. And they should, if you're a voter, you should vote. And again, my endorsement, I think that the best person for doing the job, remember what the job is, to deepen the devotion of the congregations, pastors, and institutions of Synod to Lutheran doctrine and practice. That's the basic job that needs to be done there. There's a lot of parts to it, but that's a basic job. I think the best person to do that is Pastor Matt Harrison. And if you're not a voter and you're like, wait, maybe I should talk to my pastor, you should. Talk to your pastor and encourage him to do the same, or find out who your lay delegate is and encourage him to do the same. We actually had someone at the conference say, I'm going home, and the first thing I'm going to do is talk to my pastor and our lay delegate for the presidential elections and ask them to vote for Pastor Matt Harrison. And that's all we're really asking you to do. So when we come back, we're going to spend some time with Katie Faust. Katie Faust has written recently about declining GOP support for same-sex marriage.
This week on The Word of the Lord Endures Forever, we continue our walk through Psalm 119 with How Long Must Your Servant Endure? Fixed in the Heavens, Sweeter Than Honey, A Lamp to My Feet, and My Flesh Trembles. Join me, Pastor Will Whedon, for The Word of the Lord Endures Forever, your daily 15-minute verse-by-verse Bible study on demand. Listen at thewordendures.org or your favorite podcast provider.
What did Martin Luther mean when he wrote that Christians live in Christ through faith and in the neighbor through love? And what's the difference between self-improvement and self-transcendence. Find out in the Issues Etc. Book of the Month for June, Lift Your Eyes, How to Live Outside Yourself. Learn more and purchase Lift Your Eyes at issuesetc.org or by calling Concordia Publishing House 1-800-325-3040. Lift Your Eyes, How to Live Outside Yourself, the Issues Etc. Book of the Month for June.
Luther had Wartburg. We have Collinsville. You're listening to Issues Etc.
Deaconesses are women trained to share the gospel of Jesus Christ through works of mercy, spiritual care, and teaching of the Christian faith. The word deaconess means servant. Find out more on how you can serve in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod through the vocation of deaconess at lcms.org/deaconess. Working in faith, laboring in love, remaining steadfast in the hope of our Lord Jesus Christ. LCMS Deaconess Ministry, lcms.org/deaconess.